And then we want to train you, okay, to becoming property people. And all the staff that are employed in these 2 centers become part of this company.
Yes.
Within 3 years, we bought Marriott out. And I talk about how I have failed more than I've won. But I have won nonetheless.
Yes.
Because it is in my failure that I have fundamentally learned. It is not in my winning.
Ipeleng Mkhari is the founder and group CEO of Motseng Investment Holdings. They specialize in operations in the industrial, infrastructure, and property sectors. Today, she is here to chat to us about leadership and innovations and how she has built this incredible career. So, this session is more about storytelling, right? I like to call it more storytelling than it is more of like an interview or an information, session. For me, I'm a storyteller. That's what I do, for a living. I just believe, and even based on my own experience, that we learn so much more through stories, right? That's the one thing that we have as an advantage as human beings actually over animals. Right, that we get to have our stories. And our stories is what helps us to be able to build communities and to be able to have innovation, right? So story for me is one of the most important things, in the world. I love stories. I love to tell other people's stories. It's the thing I enjoy more than anything. And just going into your story, I want us to start from the beginning, right? We're going like all the way back because we want to get to know you. You've built an incredible business. Right. And for me, I know that businesses become what they are because of the people behind them. Right. The entrepreneur or the founder or the group of people is actually the most important part, in the business. So you can study the business, which is an important part all you want. I'm more interested in studying the people that are behind the business. Because they can always build 10 more. So then you realize that it's not so much about the business, but it's more about the person. So, and the foundation of the person also is always an intricate part of that business, right? Diving into like your story, like I said, I want to go back to like all the way back because you are a Zulu girl like me, ne? You grew up in KZN. I didn't grow up in KZN. You come from Imlazi, Durban, with professional parents. Your mom was a doctor and your dad was a lawyer. And I'd just like to know that what is the greatest gift that you received from observing your professional parents? And how did that inform your work ethic? Just from a young Ipeleng's perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Melody. So I am a Zulu girl by geography. But I'm actually a Tswana girl by birth.
Yes.
Ke Moloto. Born Ipeleng Moloto. And I was telling some gentlemen downstairs to a Xhosa mum who raised me, and I was born Mlazi. So I'm everything that is South African and married to a Tsonga man. So, it's a great question. And I think upon reflection over the last 25 years of my own journey in this entrepreneurship journey, what I've realized is that the impact of seeing my parents every day as a little girl when they would get up and go to work and they would prepare themselves. And I can still have a vision in my mind of my mother's doctor's bag at the door going into the kitchen and where she was going to go to work. I still have a vision of my father's briefcase. And those images were very profound for a little girl who didn't know anything other than these are my parents. They have impacted me directly in terms of, and indirectly, Melody, and I'll explain that, because what that frame of reference has done for me growing up is that it created a certain imagery, a reference point that I could go back to later in life. And that imagery and reference point was about working hard, commitment, against all odds. You get up and you do what you've got to do. Your job. You just got a job. You get up and you go and do a thing. And unbeknownst to me, later in life, when I decided to make my own career choices, it wasn't difficult to go back to that reference point. It came like switching on a light in a dark room, where you suddenly remember, but my parents did this. Yeah. And it's like anybody who has parents who get up in the morning. You have a reference point of a father who goes and he'll work every day. Whether he's here in the home or he's on a mine far away, he's working. He's providing. A mother who's working. Yes. And that is, for me, the most critical point of what I got to understand about my parents. The second thing I think that I got to understand is my parents never worked in anybody else's business. Unbeknownst to me, that was clearly something that hit me when I had to make a choice about my own decisions. Do I work in a company or do I work for myself? It wasn't difficult to say, I can do it, because I had seen it. It was a reference point, bold reference point from the moment I was a little girl. I knew that these people worked not just in a business, but in businesses in the community. So I could go to a place called a surgery, Kwaje Mlazi, and say, that's my mom's surgery. She works in there. There are people who work with her. And every month she pays taxes. And I see her doing that. I see her clicking away on an old DOS computer.
Yeah.
Those are such powerful reference points for us as human beings. And they create a theme that psychologists will call, I suppose, core memories. Yes. Because those are the core memories that we draw on. Yes. That's my core memory of two people who hustled and who did what they needed to do, who provided for their little girls, and who did it in a way that was so dignified, so professional, so beautiful to watch. They didn't have perfection. They had their problems, but they did it nonetheless.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
It is incredible. And I'm grateful to them. And I think I cannot underscore enough the importance of us as parents. I cannot underscore it enough. When I started this journey at 23, I realized as I started speaking to myself that that was it. Nobody else had to show me. Yeah. And it really became so clear that actually we demonstrate who we are, and our children pick up everything. Yes. They pick it up. They will become that. You know, you will do the things that are good and that are bad. They will watch you. And they will do those things. But most of all, they will take, you know, kids are not stupid, they're so smart. They take what they want to take. Yes. And so it's been humbling for me, because I think I ask myself, you know, if I hadn't had this reference point, what would I have done in my career? I'm not sure. And I know, and I can tell you that my parents didn't have that reference point. Yeah. Their parents were not those people.
Wow, that's a beautiful legacy, hey? Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You mentioning, you know, at 23, right? So something for me is, gosh, like when I was like just learning about you, right, and your story, this for me like stood out, and I was like, I wonder, how did you do this, right? So to give people a bit of a background, so you completed a BA in Social Sciences at UKZN. You get recruited, right? And it's not your first job, but you do get recruited into this business called Posa ISO CCTV. Yes. Posa ISO. Oh, Posa ISO. Oh, my goodness. Look at
Melody.
Wow. I was 2 years old, guys. I've been looking at this Posa ISO and the Posa ISO. Posa ISO CCTV. And then, so you get into this company and you're working. And then at some point, and then the job came with being a director in the company, right? I believe one of the questions that you were asked at your interview is that, do you want to be an employee or do you want to be an employer? Right? It's a very empowering question. And you answered, I want to be an employer. And then you also given this directorship in a company at the age of 23. And it was all wonderful until you realized that you were being used as a BE front because your co-directors was the housekeeper and the gardener, right? You know, so my thing was that this is like around about 1998, right, at the time. BE is still fairly new in South Africa. right? But for you, you knew that being a front, there was something wrong with that. And for me, it's like, it's so intriguing because I think about myself at 23, you've just finished school, you've got this great opportunity. There's this thing called BE that the world is trying to figure out. If I was being used as a front, I can tell you right now, I don't even know if I would have known.
You would have. I think.
But how did you discern that? How did you know that something is wrong here?
You know, I talk about adversity being a propeller.
Yeah.
And it really is. Because I have specific moments in my life, throughout my life, where that type of adversity, any adversity, has allowed me to see through major moments, right? And provided huge light, even in the moments where it looks very crazy and like very, very hectic. That was a hectic moment for a 23-year-old. Yeah. Because, you know, you've told the story. So first of all, being a girl from KZN, I'm recruited by a KZN company. It's a family-owned business. Yeah. And you've got to go back to 1994, 4 years post. The country everybody's talking about South Africa. We're going through our own transition. Yeah. And this white family-owned business from Ladysmith has got a fantastic business in Durban. But they keep coming across clients saying, who's your BE partner? They're like, you know, what's this thing? What must we do? And like every South African business person who had something to protect, yes, right? And unknown to them what is going to happen. People were creating structures next to their businesses. So first of all, Iposailiso CCTV was not the main business. Their main business was a thriving, however many year old business. Yes. But because they didn't want to lose out on other, they said, you know, young person who knows nothing, wet behind their ears, green, come, right? So I was bait. You know, and I don't mind that because I learned a lot. Yes. And I think what was fascinating for me is that I didn't ask some key questions. And we've got to ask ourselves those questions when we enter into new opportunities. You know, the things I didn't ask were, who are my co-directors? I didn't know to ask that. I didn't know to ask, oh, I'm the marketing director. I don't have a marketing degrey. Exactly. Okay, yeah. But I'll go and sell. I'll go and do what you want me to do. I'm getting a salary, and so this is fine. This is a contract. Yeah. I didn't know to do a bit of a DD on the company. And I think, you know, when you say to me, how did I know? You know what's right and you know what's wrong. So I was reading up about BE, obviously, you know, and I understood that we were in a fantastic time where Black people were being supported and really exposed to new sectors, right? So on the one hand, you know, you're in this business and you're hustling. And on the other, you realize that your hustle is linked to the fact that you are Black and that you can bring specific opportunities. It wouldn't have been a problem had I understood that I needed to check, okay, what is the compliance required there? What should we be doing? But at that time, there was this concept called fronting. And we were picking it up all around South Africa. And I think what happened, and I want to paint a picture, the Mpumalanga Gaming Board is interviewing us as a company. So we're putting ourselves out there to say, we can install CCTV cameras in your casinos. What company do we use? The empowered company, right? Okay, so the empowered Poseliso is the entity that must go. Who is the person that's the main person? Ipeleng. Yeah. But we've got to show all our people.
Yes, the other two directors, yes.
And on that day, I finished my interview, and when I walk out of the interview with this huge gaming team, I walk into the reception and I meet Umama with a child on her back. So I say, hi, Ma, how are you? You know, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. And I see Ubaba Ukoge in his full regalia of the garden uniform, you know. And it was then that I asked questions. Who are these people? You know, who are they? No, they're the co-directors. I said, what do you mean? I've never met them. Does she know she's a director? Oh, wow. Does this gentleman know he's a director? So it was clear to me at that point, something just went wrong. No, this is not correct. Yeah. We are lying to people in that room. We're lying to these people, these two human beings. Yeah. And I'm not going to be part of that. It's my integrity. It's my name. Yeah. But, you know, the hustling girl in me said, okay, I'm going to stick around for another 6 months and I'm going to write my own business plan. Yes. And that's what I did. Uh-huh. And so at the end of that year, I went to my employer and I said, look, it's been fantastic. I have learned so much about myself, about the sector, about electronic security. I've really understood it, and I've built up a capability and clients. But I'm not going to continue doing it here because these are the reasons why. But I would like you to do two things for me. Release me, I'm resigning. And number two, that same company that I've been hustling that you've created, that separate company, you can just go and make that my company. And essentially deregister yourselves as directors. I have been running it and you're running your continued business. I think I can take it forward on my own.
Yeah.
And essentially that's what happened.
Wow. And they couldn't because you're a director there.
Well, not even about being a director. I think I gave them enough reasons to say, who's going to run it for you? There'll be no black girl or person. I'm prepared to take it on. I have been running to Xaba, Kunene brothers going to present this company.
Yes.
I don't want what you've built. I want what I've worked on and built with your help. And it's a simple thing. I think there's a gap in the market for electronic security services, black women owned. Let me try that out. And, he challenged me a bit. And I said, you know what, even if I don't succeed, I don't want to not try. So let me do that. And indeed, they attested to that and sent me a beautiful document and envelope in January of the next year. And it was me, Poseliso, in my name, my company. And that's how it happened. So the adversity moment is important.
Yeah.
Because if you can see what the issue is, and you can figure out a solution out of it, you can actually get through that. And it can actually propel you to see things differently and to actually find fantastic solutions out of that. And that was my story. And I tell that story because, guys, they're still fronting today.
Yes.
Yes. People are being fronted and utilized in the wrong ways. And I think that I tell it because it's about understanding that, first of all, Triple BE was a policy and is a policy that is actually critical in this country if we understand what it's aiming to achieve.
Yes.
And it therefore needs to be done in the right way.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, if we do it in the right way, we can create businesses that are sustainable, that continue to employ people, that continue to contribute to the economy, that continue to pay taxes and so forth, and that continue to create skills, development, and transformation in a country that desperately needs it. Yeah.
That experience also speaks about leadership, right? To a certain extent, because here you're in this situation and you're a leader, right, in it. And then you get out of that situation and then you start your own business. What did that teach you about just leadership, and how did it inform the decisions that you made about how you treat people in your business? Because I would imagine that prior to that experience, you were not thinking much about it. Not that you were even trying to mistreat people, but it was not something you were thinking about. But post that experience, it must have shifted something from you.
It did. I think a couple of things that I can say now is that that young person realized then that respect and integrity is everything. Trust. That today you are trusted because you say you're something, and people find out that you're not. It's gone in a second, right? And so what you've built has to be built on a bedrock of a foundation of absolute transparency and trust. I also think that from a leadership perspective, whilst I didn't realize that I was leading at that moment, there was something around backing yourself. And leadership a lot of the times is very lonely. It's a very lonely journey being a leader in whatever organization, whether it's your own or someone else's. And it doesn't matter if you're at the top of the organization or not. The function of leading is one that we learn about a lot, but it is in the testing, it is in the doing, really, that we actually implement and we learn. And so if I think of your question, I think a lot of things were learned and a lot of things were captured for myself at that moment. It was about saying, Ipeleng, if you're going to do something, you're going to have to back yourself. If you're going to have to employ people, and remember at that stage, I'm self-employed, I'm alone.
You're alone, yeah.
Okay, so there's no one else in this hustle with me. It definitely affirmed the whole context around, how people actually just need to be respected, and how we need to be able to provide an environment that is actually fundamentally growth oriented.
Yeah.
Because if it had been for me, I wouldn't have left that organization.
Yeah.
If it had been, I wouldn't have come across those challenges. And so I think the trust elements, the facts around saying, I can't take for granted a housekeeper and a gardener.
Yes.
If at anything, at the very least, what should have been done was to sit those individuals down, to make them understand what their potential role is, and to create transparency in that moment, even for myself.
Yeah.
And that was a lost opportunity.
And empower them.
And empower.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like, you look at that whole
Absolutely.
situation and you go, it's unfortunate
Yeah.
that there were just like names on a like the at CIPC, whereas
Absolutely.
it could have really been such an opportunity to just empower them, give them
Absolutely.
proper shares and pay them proper,
That's it.
for that, and get them out of being a domestic worker and a gardener.
You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So there were multiple lessons that came out of that, that I could only really learn properly when I now was running a company with other people. Because now you start employing people, then you think, wow, sure, I'm in the control position, or I'm in the authoritative position of actually employing someone.
Yes.
What does that mean? There's got to be trust there. That person needs to know what they're here to do. They need to feel respected, and they need to be given an environment where they can thrive.
Yeah.
For the business to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine that period for you was difficult, right? And also coupled, you've been open about this, that, you lost your mom at a young age. And during this period, Posa Iso, this is the time as well where you're mourning your mom. You've just come out of varsity. It's a very confusing time. It's a difficult professional thing that you're going through, and your mom is no longer there. Resilience.
Yeah.
Right? So how did these experiences of personal adversity influence your resilience and your drive really in your entrepreneurial journey? Like, what did you have to do to build yourself out of that?
So there's no manual for this thing. Yeah. It really isn't there, Melody. That resilience, I think is just years of Ipeleng growing up, learning, understanding, falling, getting up. But in that moment, certainly being unafraid. And maybe there's something that I want to talk to everyone about in terms of self-belief.
Yes, I was about to get in to say that, and I'm glad you're going there. Yeah.
I'm a big self-believer. Huge self-believer. And the thing about me is that every day when one gets up, you recast your day, you reset your day, and the goals that need to be achieved that day. But the most important constant has to be that I believe in this person. I believe in you, and it's okay. You're going to achieve whatever you need to achieve, right? And that has been one of the things that has helped me in being able to lead, in being able to be resilient, so that when things fall apart, you're not falling apart necessarily. You will lose, you will cry, you will fight, you will sacrifice, but you will never fall apart, because tomorrow is yet another day. And just the mindset of self-belief is a really powerful mindset. So Joseph Murphy, in his book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind, it's a huge book, and it's a tiny book this big, but it's huge in the content, because it talks about the things we tell ourselves. It talks about the neurological parts and the psycho, kind of the capturing of what we're talking about. And Joseph Murphy is not a guy of like today. It's an old author. Yeah. And resilience is really, a lot of it is about mindset.
Yeah.
Right? It's about what we're telling our minds. Oh, I'm not going to achieve this. Oh, I'm useless, and fundamentally, oh, I'm going to lose this particular situation or this opportunity. And unfortunately, what actually happens is that you do. You've spoken it, you've communicated it, and unfortunately, you've even communicated it back to your brain. And that's what happens. So these are not strange things, and these are things that sound they sound like you've heard them many times, self-belief, and they're real.
They're real.
They are really, really real. And resilience is I suppose, a process where there are repeated actions and habits that we go through, and hopefully we're able to build that self-belief and resilience within ourselves. Yeah.
So now moving on to, of course, you've started your business, right? And you started as Posa Iliso, CCTV. I mean, for me, I call you the queen of innovation, and I told you this, right? And I know, usually when we use words like innovation, we start to think tech. And I'm like, tech, if you late, tech is new in this game of innovation, right? Innovators have been there. And for me, you are one of those really powerhouse innovators that we have, right? Because you've got this business, it's CCTV. It could have stayed as, I don't know, CCTV really, and gone out like Kodak. But you've got this, and then you are installing these cameras, then you see properties, and then you're like, I could own property, right? So you start this business, Motseng Investment Holdings. So what was your initial vision and like your value proposition for the market when this business started?
So we were very young, and I had a business partner, and our value proposition was we are called Motseng Youth Investment Holdings. And we wanted to engage young people in South Africa around being entrepreneurs. Yes. We partnered with a whole lot of different organizations to try and do that. And we quickly realized that really there wasn't much space out there for this youth part of it, and we dropped the youth. And we then became Motseng Investment Holdings. I think what we became clear to us is that in those early days of businesses being built, Jonic and Nail and all those interesting startups, which became major entities, is that people were looking for business people. And so the youth was detracting from what we were presenting ourselves
because you're not being taken seriously.
Correct. I think the second value proposition was that we had this little Posa Iliso CCTV, and we were going into the market talking about how we've started this little business. Mind you, it's loss-making, it's not really doing much. But we're selling this dream around, here's our first subsidiary, right? Because I kind of sold the business into Motseng at nominal value. And then we're saying to the world, this is who we are. We are Motseng Investment Holdings. We're young. We'd like to start doing transactions, right? What is Posa Iliso doing every day? Going out there and just looking for opportunities, tendering on business, and getting places where they can install CCTV solutions. But the bigger Motseng, the value proposition is we are black, we're young, we are seeing that companies are needing partners, we are here, and we are able to partner. And our first transaction, if I remember correctly, was a security business called Enforce Security Group. Now, at the time, a business that had merged 10 different security companies to become one, and they needed a partner, BE, in security. And so it just kind of matched, in terms of what we wanted. So the value proposition really was we're building a business that is capable of partnering with yourselves, capable of not just being the Jonics and the Nails of old who just invest and sit back and get people to fund, but we'll invest our time and our money and our brains. And really our money wasn't there. It was all about here. So our transactional value was about, we'll put in our time and effort into a transaction and an opportunity. We get employed in that opportunity, and we'll build a business with you and grow it. And that really was the simple value proposition.
And how does it then that lead to like property?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that I'm a Durban girl. Yes. And so the first 2 or 3 transactions we did as Motseng were all with Durban-born or Durban-based entities. So Enforce was a company that was started in Durban. I think if you go to any place in Durban today, you will find an Enforce security vehicle, and they've become a major national group. Yes. And so the property opportunity comes about where we are approached by people who are in Durban who've seen us do this Enforce deal, and they think, wow, okay, here's a group of individuals. And really the proposition was by a company called Marriott Property Services, which was a big organization in Durban, in Kingsmead, for those of us who know it. And Marriott, the leadership of Marriott, Mick Hacknell came to us and said, Mick Hyatt, my apologies, came to us, may his soul rest in peace, he passed away recently, and said to us, I'm interested in asking you to come and partner with us. We have a client called Pareto. This client is owned by Eskom Pension Fund. And these are assets owned by pensioners who are largely black. So we don't know how to resolve the client's problem. The client's problem is that we're managing their shopping centers like Pavilion, but we're not empowered. We said to him, we don't know property, but we can learn.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
So I ran the Enforce business partnership with my colleague, myself on my one hand, and my business partner, Sandile Nomvete at the time, ran the property business. And so, we said, no, we are smart. We're young people. We've got degrees. Sandile, you go and do a course in Cape Town. And they paid for it. And he went. And we then structured a deal. And Motseng and Marriott then created a joint venture called Motseng Marriott Property Services. And that was our first venture into property. Yeah. But I mean, what a venture. Probably the best joint venture I've ever done in my life. Because two things happened. They seeded 2 contracts. One was managing the Pavilion Shopping Center. I don't know if you know it. The other was managing Westgate Shopping Center. 2 large super regional shopping centers. Yeah. And it was game-changing, transformational on all levels, because we went from being self-employed, yes, 2 young people with nothing, self-employed, yeah, to having a business with a partner with a massive portfolio that they're managing, and they say, we want to take these 2 large entities and put them under this thing. And then we want to train you, okay, to becoming property people. And all the staff that are employed in these 2 centers become part of this company. Yeah. Within 3 years, we bought Marriott out.
Wow.
100%. We bought them out. Yeah. It was a 50-50 joint venture. We realized at that point that this is a game-changing moment. We created a board of that company. We brought on board people like JB Magwaza to be our chairman. We had a proper structure. Sandile was the MD. I was a director. Suddenly, we were reporting to Pareto every month, flying all over the country to go and make sure that packs are being presented. And we were looking at 40 individuals looking at us saying, you are new owners, you are new partners, you are new employers. And we really took that business from there all the way up. That became the Motseng and property. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And the world opened up. And, owning a security guarding company started to look really silly.
Oh, yeah.
We started to say, no, this is probably not where we want to be. What we want to be is a business where we can provide property management services and maybe grow up the value chain, And really what I'm here to share with you is to say that there are moments in your career, employed, entrepreneurial, where there are times when you see major gaps. I saw a gap in the time when I realized, got to leave this little CCTV business and start my own.
Yeah.
That allowed me to kind of back myself and say, I can do this. Yes. The second real gap that we realized was, who knew that at Pavilion there was a place called Center Management Office? Who knew? I didn't know growing up.
Unless you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
At the mall, you would only know about that, right?
I grew up in Mlazi. I went to the Pavilion. We shopped at the Pavilion. We know the Pavilion. To walk in there as a center management team, my life just went, whoa, what is this?
It's a different dimension.
Who are these people? Where do they come from?
Where do they come from?
Right? And I think it's in those moments that we really need to be able to see the opportunity and then quickly make decisions. Because the approach from Mick Hyatt, the approach from Marriott, were all just kind of speaking to an opportunity that we had opened our hearts to, opened our minds to. They knew I am not professional in property services, but they were prepared to put in something. And I think because we were young and prepared to put everything in it, it was just a marriage that really worked. And I will never forget the day that Old Mutual, after we made this a highly successful business as a little subsidiary within Marriott, Old Mutual Property Fund came to buy out the whole of Marriott, right? And a gentleman by the name of Ben Godisang, whom I had known during my varsity days, came and said, well, you guys are part of Marriott. We'd love to buy you out as well. And we said, not going to happen. We're not for sale.
Not for sale.
You can buy the Marriott part or we'll buy them out. We're taking our Motseng property services to be our own. Sure. Because we had built this thing with them. Yeah. And we realized that we didn't want to become another division within Old Mutual. Yes. We saw right there and then in 2005 that if we buy out Marriott now, property's our game. And we did that. We went to Investec. Within 24 hours, we went to them. We said, we need this amount of cash. A term sheet was signed, and 24 hours later, credit had approved that loan. They paid us. We paid Marriott within a week. And we took ownership. We became MMPS, and suddenly we became MPS. We dropped the M, the other M. It was just groundbreaking. You know, for me, it was humbling. And I take my hat off to the one gentleman who we found in the space prior to us joining, a gentleman by the name of Ntate Sol Gumede, who had run a company called Dijalo Property Services and still does. They are part of the listed entity. How could I forget it? I'll remember it just now. So we found this wonderful space. And we said to ourselves, but who are the other black guys doing this?
Yeah, I was about to say that,
Who
you're doing
are
all of
they?
these big things, but like,
Surely there are other people.
Are you figuring it out on your own?
And we were not. And so we came across Ntate Sol, who had worked for Old Mutual and who had created his own business. And we realized, wow, there's an entire industry of people who manage assets, who acquire assets, who asset manage. It was powerful. Dijalo Property Fund eventually listed a company called Dipula. You might know it. It's a REIT. We eventually listed Delta Property Fund, in 2012. So from 2005, we were a managing agent, collecting people's rent, finding leases. And in 2012, we took a property fund of 2 billion and took it to the stock exchange. And we said, we're going to do this.
That's incredible.
It was incredible. And it was a time where, and thank you guys, it was not because of anything else other than backing ourselves. Every moment, seeing the gap. What's the opportunity? What's in front of me now? How do I utilize this? That's how the property story came about. And it gave birth, it has given birth to so many other stories. It's quite powerful for me.
For me, what I'm taking, from this more than anything is that it's not even so much about having great ideas, where it's like you have to have come up with this wonderful idea, but it's just about being present enough to see the opportunities that are presented in front of you. Because some of our greatest breakthroughs don't come as an idea that you have. So, like you got into property not based on you were sitting there dreaming and going, I'm going to get into property one day. But you were present enough with your life and your dreams and your purpose that when the opportunity came, you went straight for it.
And also sticking to your knitting. Okay, so everything you've said, I will also add and say, you've got to become good in something. You've got to stick at it and kind of repeatedly do it, right? So we did that. We did not suddenly say, oh, we've now got this property partnership. Let's start doing a whole lot of other things. We really spent the first decade so 98 was when we started the business. But if you think of 2002 to 2005, when we bought out Marriott and then we continued it, for that 2002 to 2012, it was just focused on property. It was a decade of working with great general managers, identifying amazing black women to come and be the first black female shopping center managers of large super regional shopping centers. Lynette Nduli, Fundi Mazibuga, I can name them, Venolia Andrews, Bosis Susan. Those were the things we're doing. We were saying, how do we make this thing our thing? How do we become really good at retail super regional center management? How do we find great talent and develop it? And then in the process, how do we move up the value chain? So not just collecting people's rentals, how do we then look at other adjacencies, right? How do we find the adjacencies? So facilities management becomes an opportunity because you're in property management. And then maybe a little bit of asset management. And then suddenly you realize, I could maybe even acquire a property, And these things are all in the property value chain. And we did not get sidetracked by trying to become a camera manufacturing business in the process. I'm trying to say that. I'm trying to say as much as you can find yourself in the moment, What does that mean?
What does it mean?
It means you got to, if you believe you can focus on this thing, it means you've got to develop yourself into becoming the best at it. And so we grew our portfolio slowly but surely. It took a long time though. It was hard. We were up against some of the best in the market, Brawl, JHI, everybody.
Yes.
But we stuck at our knitting and we said, we are good at this. And when we realized, Melody, that being a Black-owned business and merely relying on 3 to 5 year service contracts on property management or facilities management was not going to be good enough. It was not going to be good enough for us, and we needed to reinvent ourselves in the property space. And it meant that we needed to move up the value chain and become the owner that manages their own asset, right? Because unfortunately, we were not gifted and birthed with large portfolios that we could say, oh, I'm taking this over from somebody.
Yes.
So we had to create our own work. I don't know if you're following me.
Yeah.
Okay. So we then started saying, what would it mean to buy our own property? And we were very lucky with government policy. The DPW MinMac policy came out and said, if you're a Black property manager or you have an asset, we will give you, and you can come and buy our assets, we'll give you a 9-year and 11-month lease. Now, for those of us who are finance people, you understand that a 10-year lease is money. You leverage that and you go and raise debt against that asset. And you now can build a business and start acquiring assets. And that's what we did. So we had to reinvent ourselves, invention, and I suppose innovation, to say, how are we going to stay relevant? Are we
And
just
not
going to
lose business?
That's
like you said, the 3 to 5 years is too short.
If
you
you've
can
got
get kicked
real,
out.
if you've got real competitors around you,
Yeah.
you know, you start saying, okay, we're not just a service provider, we're not just a managing agent, we can do other things. And at that time, our competitors were not looking at going up the value chain. And we were saying, no, we want to become a growth point maybe one day. Yes, we can build our own portfolio. We can acquire our own. So innovation is key, I think, and reinventing yourself, reinventing your brand, and in your persona, reinventing your business brand, being able to identify what makes you a brand that is sustainable and what gives you longevity.
Sure. I mean, I imagine that there was, you probably know, a lot of failures that happened, right? Also just looking at the fact that, you know, you've entered an industry that was male-dominated. The industry was not built for a Black girl from Umlazi to succeed, right? And in those early days, you were like the only Black female for the longest time, you know, in the boardroom. And you had to fight your way, you know, as well, to be heard, to be taken seriously. So it wasn't just like all easy and, you know, and wonderful. But what were some of those failures, like those difficult failures that you had where you found yourself going, I don't know what I've gotten myself into here, you know? And what did you learn from them? How did you come out of it?
There's so many. And I'm a person who's vulnerable enough to say that we've got to share those failures in order for other people to understand how hard it is. So 10 years, I found myself in the first 5 years. I remember finding ourselves, both Sandile and I found ourselves blacklisted.
Sure.
That was a shock. In my personal capacity. Yeah. And it's going to happen to you as a business person if you're starting out and you're maybe not managing cash flow and you're thinking, oh, it's all fine. We got rid of that very quickly. We realized, oh my goodness, we're running a business. We're running a serious business. And we were lucky because we suddenly got into some proper cash flow and life changed. And that was probably before we even did our Marriott deal, if I remember correctly. Now, at that point, that might not seem like a major failure when you're 23 and you don't have a child and you don't have family and it's not impacting other things, but it impacted us, you know, because it felt like we've disappointed ourselves. We can't actually move our business forward and we can't move our own personal growth and credit ratings forward. The second things that I can remember really well was we made really bad decisions around the security business. We built a little cleaning and security kind of multi-service business. When we were in the partnership with Enforce, we tried to convince the chairman that we needed to start a multi-service business. And we said to him, there's a young man called Kenton Fine. He started a business called Servist. Let's do something like him. We think it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we are security. We don't want to do anything else. So we disinvested. We sold out of Enforce and we started our own. We called it More Secure, More Clean. Oh, my word. I don't know what we were thinking.
Oh my God.
Motseng, More Clean,
More
More
clean.
Secure. Anyway, Motseng Outsourced Services was born. It was an absolute and total failure, you know, and it was bleeding money. We had security guards, we had cleaners, we got work,
Yeah.
right? We got work, but it was a different kind of business and we didn't know how to manage it. But we hung on to this business for ego, I suppose. We hung on to the business because it's our brand. It's
It's your brand.
there. It's called More Secure. People wear our uniform.
Uniforms,
It's the logo.
exactly. You employ people. How you're serious?
But yet every month we're not making anything, you know. And so, you know, it took our chairman who came on board to help us start this property services business, MMPS, and he said, get rid of this thing. Just get rid of this thing. It's bleeding and it's actually draining the other businesses because now you're trying to service something that's not bringing you anything. So, you know, major moment of learning.
Yeah.
Don't have a lot of vanity around your business.
Yeah.
Right? Know what your business is there for. If it is there as a passion project, okay, that's fine. But if it's there to actually feed you and to grow and you want it to be a profit-making business, well, then a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in the context of, it's my business. I can't let go of it. And we get very emotional about it.
Yes.
And so divorcing ourselves from that emotion is important. Big failure, you know, and we eventually let go of it. Some of my other very, very real failures, and I think they're failures that we can all learn from, is partnerships are great in business, but there is a season for them. And so a season comes and it will be fantastic and you will run and you will achieve a lot together. You will run like the speed of light and you will achieve so much. But when it's time for that season to end, acknowledge it and end it amicably. I didn't. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's life. And I learned from that because the things that are important to you should be important to your partner, and the things that are important to your partner should be important to you.
Yeah.
And when that particular value system and connection changes, it can change everything around you. And it took a lot for me. It took me really, really having to dig deep within myself. I lost a lot of time because I was fighting somebody, thinking that I had to fight them for value in the business. And one day I remember lying in my lounge crying,
Yeah.
really just lost.
And it was also a friendship for you that
it
you
was
had built
it was a
decades, right? High school
friendship.
friend. Yeah.
And my husband holding me and saying, the money is not worth it. Your sanity is everything.
Yep.
You know, so let go. That valuation that you've done and that you're both bickering about, it's not worth it. Actually, it's just being destroyed whilst you're fighting. So walk away. Walk away, entrepreneur. It's okay. You'll do it again. You'll start again.
You'll start again.
Okay? Massive lesson. You know, can I call it a failure? At that moment, it was. It's a massive moment of learning for me, you know. And those are some of the lessons I've learned. You know, there are many more. And I talk about how I have failed more than I've won. But I have won nonetheless.
Yes.
Because it is in my failure that I have fundamentally learned. It is not in my winning.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bill Gates says, it's wonderful to recognize me and applaud all my wonderful things that I've achieved, but it's far more important for you to heed the lessons of my failures.
Yeah.
It was at that moment of real personal friendship, business failure, that I changed the context of my conversations with people. Conversations like these.
Yeah.
And I will never forget being in Durban, invited by dear sister Lynette Nduli. And she said, we want you to speak at this wonderful event. And my whole talk was about the things you don't know.
Oh.
what you don't see, and the failure that we go through. It's failure is so important. Adversity is a propeller. I still say it till this day. And, I'm grateful that I've gone through all of those lessons because I keep winning because I'm learning.
Yeah. Okay, so expansion.
Yes.
Right? So you've built this business. It's in South Africa. You're doing well. And like the true innovation queen that you are, you go, hey, there's a whole continent out there. So what inspired the decision really to expand beyond South Africa? And how did you go about it? Like, what was that thing? Which country did you start with? I think we and I'm asking this really on behalf of everyone because, when you're a business owner, we all have this desire to say, I want to go international. I don't even know what that means. We just know that we want to go international. But how does that happen? How does one know where to go international, when to go international, how to go international?
Guys, I just want to say, Melody, you asked the best questions in the best way. Thank you. Thank you for that question. It doesn't just come overnight, So I described for you the journey in one pillar called property and how we made decisions and decided now is the next step to take it to the next level. It's the same even with the decisions we made around the geographies we wanted to be represented in and why we wanted to be represented in them and the timing related to that. So post 2012, as I mentioned to you, 10 years between the time that we started our property Marriott, 2002 and 2012. 2012 was quite a seminal year because we listed Delta in November. And in that same year, we acquired a business, which was a telecommunications managed services business. So basically, facilities management in the telecommunications sector. And we made a decision as an executive to say, we've done this property thing really well. We think we've come to the pinnacle of where we needed to be, and we'll continue running the fund, and we'll manage the fund. And we had now had these adjacencies in facilities management. But we were saying maybe we could look at other adjacencies because managing an asset, right? If you think about it, it's managing an asset. An asset is just an asset. It's a property, it's a telecoms tower, it's a solar farm, it could be a health facility. And so the decision to acquire this particular business that we bought called Cellmec, it just so happened that this business had two companies, one in South Africa and one in Mozambique. That was fully established with a massive amount of people. We acquired about a business that had at the time, about 250 people in South Africa, maybe another 100 in Mozambique. And it was a business that was focused on the MNOs, the mobile network operators, and helping them to manage their assets, passive maintenance. So just like this building that's passive, it's just a building. And in that space, we said, that's it. That's the business we want to buy. And that extended us immediately into a new geography. The timing was right for us. So we knew that we had made this transition in property. We were ready to really embark in new sectors with the same capabilities. What are those capabilities? Managing facilities and managing assets, understanding what that goes into that, but doing it in different sectors. And so we believed that the timing, and I mean, if you do MBA, you do business courses, there's a timing around which you're able to plot and say in your business, I can work in this universe, but I can take the same capabilities into that universe. That's different geography, we had to look at a couple of things, language barriers and so forth, but Mozambique made sense to us. And indeed, it is a business that we have held now. We've been in that space, so the business was already there before we were there, but we've been in Mozambique for over 15 years. Wow. We've managed and operated a business there, now sitting at about 280 people. The business has grown. Mozambique is a much smaller country than South Africa. We're in Maputo all the way to Pemba. Now, being in that country, having a team on the ground, an MD, it really opened up our eyes to say, but if we can do it in Moz, we can do it anywhere else, right? And so what we did do, and what I'm not telling you, is that prior to that time, during our early days in the property space, we had been to DRC, we had been to Nigeria. We managed a shopping center in Ikeja in Nigeria. It went belly up, and we ran back home.
Oh, wow.
Right? So we had learned, we had a bit of scars on our back.
Yeah.
What had we done differently now? We had bought a business. We were in control of the business. We have a local partner. Very important when you go out of South Africa, get a local partner.
Okay.
So the business already had a local partner. We bought 70% of the business that was a South African gentleman, Mr. Ben Pina. We bought a going concern, a business that we believed we could very easily understand, learn. We're a learning team.
Yes.
And we bought a business that had a growth trajectory. It hadn't reached its peak. It wasn't a mature business. It had opportunities to grow into allied sectors in Mozambique, such as property. It was in telcos, but we could just take the same capability into properties. And before you knew it, we started doing things like facilities management through that business. So that gave us confidence to say, through the acquisition strategy, we could enter new markets carefully. We've sat in Mozambique for 15 years.
Yes.
We have grown into Lesotho because our clients we manage, who we support in Mozambique, have said to us, come and help us in Lesotho. Same thing, right? And so we opened in Lesotho. Some markets are tough. Lesotho's been tough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say to you, very different to Mozambique.
Yes.
You
Every
know,
country has its.
Every country has its own risk matrix.
Yeah.
Its own analysis that it requires. And during that period, what was interesting is that we bought the Mozambican business through a Mauritian entity. And so we set up a little entity in Mauritius. So beyond that, we haven't gone. We have a small shelf company in Namibia, and we have a small shelf company in Botswana that we haven't activated. But I have dreams of taking the company even beyond those SADC borders, because I believe that it is possible.
Yes.
You know, it's about the right timing. It's about proper analysis and research. It is about proper partnerships in those localities. And I think it's about sticking to your knitting. Don't go too far from what you do. You'll burn your fingers. You know, it's the same thing that someone who comes to South Africa wouldn't just go and do something different in a locality here that they don't understand. And so that has been, touch wood, a very, very positive journey. It was wonderful to celebrate Comserve's, which is now the company, we've renamed the company in Mozambique, Comserve's 20-year history. And we've walked a road with our client for 20 years. Since they've been in Mozambique, we've been there walking a road with them, and many other clients. And I think if I were to say anything about expansion, it would be to say go slowly.
Yeah. Okay.
Go slowly in terms of other geographies. And really, it would be to make sure that as you do so, you then focus on that and just get that right, you know. And that's been our strategy.
Wow. Okay, and now you growing into other spaces, right? And I want to get into this part where smart building solutions through, is it called MPA mod?
Yes, MPA mod.
MPA
yes.
mod. I was just trying to make sure that I'm not screwing up another Zulu word, right? In case it's something in Zulu, and my mom will be like, you know, like, what's wrong with you? So I want to know that, what is your perspective, right, on emerging trends in property and infrastructure on the continent? And just, sorry, also breaking down a little bit about MPA mod, just for people who don't know what that business does. And,
yes. So obviously, I'm going to now fast forward and say, you know, we've been building these businesses, and between 2012, when we acquired this telecoms business, we really focus on these, you know, property, facilities management, telecoms, and we had acquired, I didn't talk about it, a PPP business. Well, we built up a PPP business, public-private partnerships, which is really like property. But then 2020 comes, and wow, you know, the world changes. And prior to 2020, you know, major adversity moments in Motseng, major. So I talked about the loss of a business partner. We acquired Cellmec in South Africa and Mozambique. And within 4 years of acquiring Salmek in South Africa, and this is another failure moment, I have to retrench 100 people.
Sure. This is pre-COVID now.
Pre-COVID. It's 2017, 2016, 2017. Why? We didn't foresee that the MNOs in South Africa would shift their procurement strategy. I met some procurement people, would shift their procurement strategy from procuring from local players. Yeah. And overnight, because they're listed, they've got to deliver returns to shareholders. Overnight, they said, we're going to procure from OEMs. We're not an OEM. We've bought this business. We've laid out millions. We've got people. And we didn't see it coming. The board didn't see it coming. None of us saw it coming. So we went from one day being a sole service provider in many regions to being told we're no longer the client. Your client is this Swedish company who doesn't care really much about localization. Yeah. And so that shifted us fundamentally. And retrenching 100 people, losing that business was quite key. And I say that as a precursor to what I'm going to tell you about MPA Mott. So come 2020, we're coming out feeling a little bit beaten. Yeah. We've got scars, we've got bruises on our body. Yeah. We're not feeling as confident as we were before. And we've got to come up with something new. And the load shedding is coming at a massive rate every day. Yes. And we start talking as an exco about energy and what that means to us. And lo and behold, we were very lucky. A industry leader, an engineer, approached me and said, we'd like you to partner with a company, a small engineering business led by a black female, Indian female, and she wants to grow her business and into engineering, bigger business, and maybe you want to enter the engineering space. And I said, I'm not sure, but let me think about it. I didn't think too long, and indeed we did that. We then bought a company called Mott MacDonald Africa, and Mott MacDonald Africa was an interesting acquisition because they had come into South Africa 10 years before the World Cup. And like many big engineering and construction businesses, by the time the World Cup came and left, what happened? 2010, they came in for the World Cup. Everyone made their money and they stayed for 10 years. And then they said, we're going back to where we came from. Yeah. But as we're going back to where we came from, it's an English-based business. We either will shut this business down because we don't see it as a going concern. It was loss-making. Or someone can buy it. And we, 2 women, were crazy enough to say, we'll buy it. But we saw an opportunity in this business. And we really believed, Malani Padeyachi-sama, and I must take my hat off to Malani because she had a business called MPA, and we had a business called Motseng. So we called it MPA Mott. Okay, so that's where the company name comes from. We acquired a business of about 200 engineers. We bought it from Mott MacDonald. It was not making money. And in 4 years, that business, Malani, has fundamentally turned it around.
That's amazing.
And it is today the largest wholly black female-owned engineering business in South Africa. And I'm proud of that because it's not a Zutari, it's not one of those bigger ones like Oricon where they employ 2,000 people, but we employ 200 full-time engineers.
Yes, that's amazing.
That's hectic.
That's
hectic,
yeah.
right? Thank you. And my partner runs that business, and she runs it like a machine. It's just amazing what she's done. Energy was the driver of the growth of that business. Mm-hmm. Energy. Loss-making business, and Mott MacDonald decides they're going. We say, well, we're South African. We can take it over. And the biggest vertical or the growing vertical in that business was not the transport section or the civils, it was energy. Mm-hmm. And we just focused our minds on that. And really it has transformed the whole business and the other divisions within the business. And I can only say that it takes people coming together to collaborate. Because that was a collaboration moment. It was come Malani, let's put our, 1 + 1 will equal 3. If we really put our minds to it. And that was MPA Mott. And what MPA Mott did for Motseng, that was bruised, remember?
Yes, coming out of retrenching 100 people.
It kind of lifted our spirit. It kind of said to us, we can innovate again. We can come into a new place, a new sector, still in the broad built environment. Yes. And we can own that as one of ours, you know. So we own a 30% share of that business. It's a powerful business. It's really come into its own. And I think what's been really fantastic is hearing the feedback from clients. So as our Motseng teams go to talk to lenders and talk to property owners, and you say, oh, no, our sister company, MPA Mot. What? Oh, are you sister? Wow, they do great work for us. They're a great lenders technical advisor. They're a great energy team, you know. And it makes me so proud to know that two Black women could come together and make a difference in a small business where people could have lost their jobs.
Yes, and engineers, my goodness.
You know,
Ooh.
we don't want to lose another engineer in
No,
this
we do
country.
not want to lose another
We want to
engineer.
keep our
Yes.
engineers in South Africa. We want to
Yes.
develop that skill set. And we're a business so focused on STEM, we want more Black women to go into the engineering sector. So I am energized and excited about that new vertical. It's a new space for us. It's a powerful space. It's then opened Melody our own eyes as Motseng. So we've now created a small division, the youngest division in our organization, called Motseng Energy. We have a gentleman who runs that. And his sole purpose is to go out there and find great transactions, either annuity-based transactions or IPP-based transactions that allow us to enter that space. We are probably a decade late. There are people who've done amazing things in this space. We are very late, but we've said it's never too late.
It's never too late.
You come in and you make your own impact.
Yeah.
And it was easier for us because we're in property, so we understand rooftops. We understand what they mean to this particular solar sector, or, you know, we understood also, we have a business, I mentioned PPPs, public-private partnerships. We've been in a triple P for 15 years. Yes. And we understood what it means. Really, the IPP space is a triple P, you know, with Eskom as a main off-taker. So we suddenly were reinventing what we were. Yeah. And during that period of 2020 and darkness and challenge for everybody, there were things that we were doing that were exciting. Yeah. And I thank God for that. Yeah. I thank God for the fact that my company didn't fall apart. Yeah. That we could keep growing and finding new opportunities and keeping our staff excited. And that we have now really re-envisioned ourselves. And so our strategy today is called Chasing 2028. We concluded it last year, end of 2022, beginning 2023, and it's a simple strategy. We now see ourselves as an infrastructure business. We see ourselves as a business that today, through the foundation of property, PPPs, telecoms, that we actually can really now stretch it beyond engineering, energy, and even more. And I think what we are seeing is that in 5 years, what we want to do is double our assets under management in terms of third-party assets and our own assets. And we want to deepen ourselves in 3 spaces. Infrastructure. Infrastructure for us is anything that looks like an asset is an asset. If it's a property, if it's a wind farm, if it's a health facility, it's an asset for us. It's a retail shopping center, it's an asset. So infrastructure for us is very key. And 2 things in infrastructure, it's project finance assets or directly held assets. That's it. That's it. 2 is renewable energy, green energy. Yes. That's a vertical that's new. That's the second one. And the third is telecoms. And that's it. That's who we are.
So that's the future.
That's the future. And you know, in each of those, there's something I want you to understand is that when we entered the space of telecoms managed services, one of the key things we did was to partner with IHS, which is a large towerco, global towerco. I don't know if you know towercos, I'm sure you do. Towercos are the entities that own the assets, the actual towers. We just manage them. Yeah. Then the MNO is the mobile operator that has built the towers, right? We decided at the time when we acquired, with our mindset, our abundance mindset all the time, if we're going to manage the tower, one day we've got to own the tower. Just like property, if you're going to manage the asset, one day you got to own the asset. That's our strategy. So our view is, if you're going to provide the service and be an EPC in energy, you got to be a partner in the actual asset itself. So what we've taken from 25 years ago is this. An asset that has got an income stream, whether it's a project finance, debt, senior debt financed, cash flow, whether it's a rental stream, lease on a towerco, because mobile operators lease towers, whether it is a property with a rental income stream, it is an asset. It is an income generating asset. It doesn't matter if it's project finance or directly held. And we have decided as a group that the infrastructure play in those asset classes will be to always do three things: co-own, asset manage, and operate. And that's our strategy.
Wow.
And that's the infra play. And that's where we are today.
Sure. When you're a working library, we must protect at all costs. At all costs.
No, thank you. Thank you.
At all costs. I am on my last question now.
Wow.
I know. So now we are living in this time of uncertainty, right? For everybody, right? And I speak for everyone politically, the environment, economically. How are you navigating this season? And you've had to navigate a lot of seasons of uncertainty, right? This one is a different kind. Yeah. I mean, I'm like just thinking of, myself. I grew up during the 90s, right? I'm a child of the 80s, but, I don't really remember the 80s. But I'm a child of the 90s. And one of my core memories is the transition into freedom, right? I think I was like 9 years old. In 1994, I was like 9 years old. And because I was living in Orlando West, like it was a very politically charged, environment. And I remember that transition, very well, with like Nelson Mandela, becoming president. And because we were neighbors with Winnie Mandela, we lived in the same neighborhood with Nabo Walter Sisulu and Archbishop Tutu. So I remember it as a core memory. And I've never really felt that until now. That feeling that I had for me like 30 years ago is how, the way that politics are right now, to a certain extent, it brings up that feeling of uncertainty of what's going to happen, right? Like, where are we going? What's going to happen? I'm not sure, and I don't know is it like a similar thing for you to a certain extent? What is it for you in terms of business and also just like on a personal level as well?
So I think there is a lot of uncertainty. I would not negate that. In fact, I think one of the really, really interesting things that's happening globally, if you look at countries around the world, is that there is a major shift. And that shift that's happening is that people on the fringes are seriously starting to stand up and say, we're tired of what might be in the core and we need to change it.
Yes.
And we can demonstrate that in many, many geographies around the world. Yeah. Geographies where people thought there was enough control. India, Prime Minister Modi did not get a landslide victory.
Yes.
Okay. The UK. Yes. You've got this major shift that's just happened in decades.
Yep.
Wow. People on the fringes are talking.
Yeah, French politics.
And they are French.
Funny. Yeah.
South Africa.
Yep.
The fringes said, enough. Okay. So there is a lot of uncertainty. Yeah. But I think that in that uncertainty comes a sense of, I suppose, a reset. Yes. Okay. So whilst I am watching and looking at all this activity that's happening around us, I think what's very important for us as individuals is to be able to understand what is it that you can control, okay, in your environment, in your universe. What is it that you cannot control, right? What is your contribution to this particular uncertainty or the uncontrollable environment? There's very little that you're contributing to it, and there's very little that you can impact in it. Yes. And I think my view and my lens on life is that if there is one thing I'm going to do and do well, it is to contribute positively in a way that is clear, that is productive in that which I can control. It is very important. Because we can get very, very depressed. We can get very, very distracted. Yes. We can get actually almost kind of diverge from the actual focus of what it is that we should be doing. And my chosen, path is to say, in this season of my life and my career that we're talking about, it is the season to contribute to the reform in our country, the infrastructure reform that we must have in this country, whether we like it or not. So if it is that little impact that I have, I can't have an impact on the politics or the GNU. I can have an impact on how I relate to that which I can control. And where I am able to have an impact, I want to collaborate with great partners. I want to work with amazing teams. I want to be able to grow this country through the little contribution that we make. And I want that to have a ripple effect, hopefully amongst the people that we are working with, and broadly at a kind of a domestic level, right? And so, Melody, for me, it comes down to, I suppose back to that conversation I had about, the self-belief, the mindset, right? Because what we put in here is certainly what we're going to be living.
Despite what the environment
is. And I think the reset and the uncertainty that we do see around us is not just us, right? So what we actually need to understand is that a lot of us are in the same boat. We're just rowing possibly at the different paces, but we're in the same boat. So there is a goal that we need to achieve, and that is to reset everything that we see around us. I think the second thing about us here in South Africa, or let's just talk about Gauteng, right? We are citizens of a province. We are tax-paying people. If we understand that there is uncertainty, the greatest thing that we can do is to create a positive energy in the spaces that we have. It's the greatest impact you can have in your businesses, in your offices, in your homes, in your communities. That's the greatest impact you can have. That which you can control. If we need to have a clean street, or we need to fix something, or we need to support somebody, that's the impact. That if everyone who is living in an uncertain world, in an uncertain community could be doing that, what are we creating? We're resetting. We are just slowly in our own actions and our own capabilities doing that. And I think that uncontrolled space and that uncertainty, I'm not saying it'll dissipate quickly, but it will sort itself out. It really will. And so for me, as I look at the world, I say again, the fringes are standing up. Not a bad thing at all. It's just about how that obviously plays itself out in each of the geographies that we're in. And I think that remaining very focused as individuals becomes very important, so that you don't get distracted by all of that.
So thank you for taking your time. Thank you for coming to just, like I said, share so openly, and so honestly. I've learned so much. And I'm so happy that we are actually documenting this. Usually with these sessions is that you hear stuff, right? And then when you watch it, like you hear new information and you go, oh, I did not catch that, right? So I just think it's so amazing. I wish we could document even more, because you have so much knowledge. Like I said, you are like a walking library, and we need to protect you at all costs. And we need to try and extract as much of that knowledge, out of you in the next coming years, to just make sure that it is there, for the future generations. This is why we do, this work that we do, right? Because these stories are so important. The life that you've lived, the work that you've done is such an important legacy for us as South Africans, for Black women, for Black people. So thank you so much for the time.
It's a deep pleasure, and I hope I gave you enough of myself, because it is a deep, deep honor and pleasure to be able to speak to people, because it's a journey, and a lot of what you see, there's a lot more behind it that you don't know. And so I really, really want to say thank you for that, because these are treasured moments for me, Thank you, guys.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. I loved it. Thank you. You were a queen. You are a queen. You're a queen. Thank you, dear. Thank you.